Hi, I'm Jesse at strobepro.com, and this is our in-depth video guide for the Godox AD200 Pro version 2. Godox has been around since 1993, but what really put them on the map in 2017 was the release of the AD200. This had never been seen on the market before. It had a bare bulb flash head on it. Plus, you could easily take this off and put the Fresnel head on, using it more like a speedlight. But the best thing of all is it was battery powered, and this battery lasted forever. Photographers just loved this around the world, and it really propelled Godox into this international company. In 2019, they updated it a little bit, and not wanting to mess with a good thing, they left most of the things unchanged. In the body, they just recessed the screen a little bit. They added a color stability mode, and then they added an extra stop of power on the low end, so you could go super low down to 1/256 of its power. But the bare bulb and the Fresnel remained unchanged. That brings us to today with the AD200 Pro version 2. Again, the form factor has stayed basically the same, and that's nice because all of the previous accessories work with this light. This is probably the biggest upgrade though, because now we have changes to the actual bare bulb head, where we have a whole ring of LEDs, and also the Fresnel head here, which has added more cooling, so it'll run longer. Plus, we get the addition of a brand new TFT color screen and a couple of other new features that we're gonna go over. Follow along with me as we go in depth with the AD200 Pro version 2. Let's talk more specifically about the differences between the AD200 Pro and its successor, the AD200 Pro version 2. So right off the bat, when you turn this on, you're going to see a little RGB light up here. And this is a new group feature where Godox will assign a color to a specific group. Speaking of colors, this is a brand new TFT color display as well. So completely redesigned and updated for this model. Full color just allows you to see high contrast a lot easier in sunlight. That's a big improvement from the previous version. You're also going to get a new stop of power on the low end. So the previous one went down to 1/256 power. This is now going to go all the way down to 1/512. Probably the biggest difference, if you have this bare bulb head on, is the complete redesign of this round looking head. So compared to the previous version, you're going to see all these LEDs indicated around here. And that was one of the drawbacks of the old version. It was just a flash on the bare bulb. You had no way of using a modeling light. Now with this one, it's actually got quite a bright light here. If I just flick that on. So this is going to be very useful for finding focus or just seeing where you've pointed your softboxes or your light when you have this in there. The Fresnel head's also got an update. You can see on the new one over here that it has venting on the top. The other change is going to be this row of LED lights on the top and the bottom. Now the original actually does have LEDs. They're harder to see than this new one. But the LEDs were honestly kind of useless. There's been a lot of changes in LED technology. These are much brighter and you can actually use this. Now, with that venting, you also get some added benefits, specifically when you're using in high-speed sync. You get a big change to the number of full power shots actually that you can fire before overheat protection kicks in. So in this one, it was 20, and now you can get 40. So it's doubled its capacity because of the active cooling here. And in just regular mode, it's not as extensive, but you can go from 40 here to 50 on the new one. The bare bulbs both vent from the front here, so nothing's really changed. They're quite efficient at doing that. So it doesn't really change the thermal limits on the new version versus the old. But if you're a person who's using the Fresnel head, you're really going to like that improvement. The bodies remain mainly unchanged. There are a couple of minor differences that we'll just go over here. You can see on the Pro 2 on the bottom, there's a larger vent there compared to the top. But the biggest difference on this side is this port, and that brings us to another feature. So previously on all Godox strobes, they would include this legacy port here. This is if you were using a really old controller that didn't have like 2.4 gig controlling capabilities, for example, you could plug a little receiver into that and then you could use your controller. Well, Godox has finally decided that that port is really not necessary. Out of the thousands of these that we've sold, I've never sold a receiver to someone to use with that. So they've used a new port here that actually might be a little bit useful for you. And that is a port for the PB960 external battery pack. So if you have one of those, they originally came with the AD360 and you could buy them separately to run with speed lights that were AA if you wanted to turn them lithium. But now you can plug that in here as well, and what it's going to do is simply extend the life of the battery. This battery already lasts an insane amount of time, but with the addition of the LEDs, it might draw a little bit more power, and if you're a user who wants to use those all the time, then you can get that external pack, plug it in, and this thing is literally going to run for hours and hours at a time. So that's a nice improvement on that side. But otherwise, everything is staying the same. The battery remains the same as well. So that's a huge thing, guys. I know tons of you have extra batteries and you've been collecting in this whole AD200 ecosystem over the years. This was a very high performance battery. It works great. We have little to no problems with them as well. So Godox just left it the same. Now you can throw them in your bag, mix them up. It's not going to matter if you take an old AD200 battery and put it in the Pro II or vice versa. They are all going to be compatible. Now looking at any of the other changes, the bottom basically remains the same. We have our USB port down in the bottom. That's for firmware upgrades. And then we have our mounting ports here. So I'll show you that in a minute when we do the unboxing. You can install the mounting point there, or you can flip it around and go on the side. Now on that side, there's a little minor difference here. You can see the vent port, again, is expanded a little bit on the Pro II. And now we also have our little LED RGB indicator to show you which group, which I talked about before. Now the big difference again is going to be in the heads themselves, but a great thing about the head is that the bare bulb is also compatible with any version. It remains the same all the way back to the original AD200. You can swap them back and forth, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, this is a little bit wider here, so it takes up a little bit more room if you are going to run the new bare bulb head, obviously because of the addition of those LEDs. But the case and everything is still the same, so it's really not that big of a deal. And then the only changes you're going to see on the Fresnel head is it's a little bit longer, or a little bit wider, I should say, just to add the LEDs that are in the front there now. And we also have a new cooling port on the top where we get the addition of those new thermal limits. So those are basically the changes that we have between the original AD200 Pro and the new AD200 Pro version 2. All right, time to unbox the flash. Great news, it still comes with this carrying case, which keeps all of the little accessories contained in their form-fitted little slots here, so it's not going to bang around and you're not going to break flash tubes and that kind of stuff. So we have our actual body here, which has the Fresnel already attached to it. Then we have the bare bulb head, which you're going to need to attach the actual flash tube to, which is right there. And again, being the same as all the other versions, that's awesome. We have our battery, and this white thing is just a cover on that, which you can pull off. Then we have our umbrella mount and our charger. So this is a USB charger, and the cable for that is right up here. So you can plug this into a computer or any USB-C port, but you can also use this adapter here. So this is just a wall adapter where you'll plug in and then send the cable in there, and that's going to charge it a little bit faster than if you were just plugging into your computer, for example. Other than that, you just have a manual up there, but you won't need that because we're going to go through absolutely everything right now. Let's get this light set up now. We're going to start with the bare bulb head. It's really easy to install. On the actual flash tube, you'll have a red dot, which corresponds to the red dot on the inside of the receiver. Just line those up. Once they're lined up, just push straight in, and that's going to seat in there. Don't worry about touching this glass cover with your bare fingers. It's actually protecting the flash tube. so you don't have to worry as long as your hands are clean. So that's set up. We can easily put that on now. Just the exposed pins on the bottom line up to the exposed pins on the actual flash body. And then once it's sitting like that, you're just going to push down. Make sure you hear that click. If it doesn't click, it's not seated all the way. To remove it, you just pull that back and it's going to slide in again, and it's very quick to change those. So to change the Fresnel head, it's the exact same thing. You have the same connections. Just line the pins up. Once it's flush, push it down and it's locked in, and then you can easily switch back and forth in seconds to whatever head you want to use. And to install the battery, it's really easy. Just remove this cover right off the top here. And this battery has a groove on it, same battery as all the other versions of this light. Just line that up with the groove on the bottom. And it's spring loaded, so if that's in the way, you can just kind of take the battery and push it over, and it's going to drop in. So you'll see it kind of bounce, and then just click it in, make sure it's all the way in there. Just like before, it's got the same release as the head. So I like to put some pressure down and then pull the release, and it'll pop out and you can take the battery out really easily. And now we're ready to go and power that up. The last piece we have is the included umbrella adapter. Now this just mounts to the bottom of the strobe, but you can also put it on the side or even in the head here. Just be careful in the head. I'm not really sure why they put that one. It's just going to put a lot of stress there. But you have a little wheel and these little slots in here. So just line that up anywhere you find that brass insert. Spin it down. And once it gets close, you can see it kind of spinning. Now I know it's locked in there. It's not going to spin anymore. Tighten it down, and we can actually take this back off the thumb screw here. And I just have a little mini stand here. Obviously yours would probably be a larger stand that you're using. And once that's backed off, you can just tighten it. And now what we can do is control the tilt up and down, lock it into place, and we're good to go. This mount is fine if you want to use small umbrellas, but how do you mount a softbox? It's not apparently obvious. There's a couple of ways that you can do it. If you would like to purchase a Godox softbox, you can get something like this guy here, a multifunction softbox, but it is very small and it uses this proprietary mount, which can only be used with the bare bulb head. So it has two little notches in there, and that's where this little thumb screw comes in. Back that off, and you're just going to put this on. There's two little pins, so basically just rotate that till you feel it drop in like that, quarter turn, and then you can lock this in. If you want to make full use of your light, you definitely want to pick up the S2 bracket. This is sold separately, but definitely worth the investment. This allows you to use any Bowens mount modifier like our Strobe Pro Rapid Snap softbox series, which I'll show you, and it just snaps right into the front with the Bowens speed ring. Because we're using the bare bulb head, I want to make sure I give myself lots of room here. I don't want this to slide all the way down and block the receiver ports. We're going to give it a few inches here, and then we can adjust that after. So just lock it back down into place, and then we can grab our softbox. So this is a small 24-inch. Like I said, you could easily use a 60-inch. The 200 here has plenty of power to light that up. But they all mount basically the same way here. Just slide this over the front, being careful not to hit the bulb, and line the Bowens mount pins there. Once they're flush, give it a quarter turn, and that's going to lock in place. Now we can use the tilt adjustment on the light, but before we do that, actually let's slide that back down. So I mentioned we gave ourselves lots of space. Pull that back down until it just lightly touches that, and then we're going to lock it in place. That just pulls the flash tube away from the front of the diffuser, allowing you to diffuse that light more evenly before it exits. From here, we just adjust our tilt wherever we want, and then we can lock it into place. Now you didn't have to do this with the old lights, but because we slid this back, we want to make sure if we're taking off the softbox that we push it forward again. Otherwise, you're going to find it's stuck. An assistant or even yourself is going to try to pull that off, and it's not going to go anywhere. Once that's slid forward, now we can release the softbox, carefully slide that out, and we're good to go. If you're using the Fresnel head, you don't have to worry about any of that, but because of the new design on the bare bulb head, you just want to make sure that you slide that back and forth so you don't cause any damage. Godox has spent over 7 years building out the ecosystem for the AD200. It would be a real shame if all the accessories you already own don't work with the latest version. Well, I have good news, they're all fully compatible. I have a few accessories for the AD200 on the table here, and there's just a few things I want you to be aware of when using especially the bare bulb attachment here. So on the previous one, it didn't have the modeling lamp like the new one, so you could just drop this in here and not be worried because there was no LEDs to use with it. But on the 200 Pro version 2 now, you have that whole ring of LEDs. So any of these accessories that basically use that attachment, you're not really going to be able to use the LED modeling lamp on that. So it just gets completely blocked there on something like that dome. Even these reflectors here, you're not really going to be able to use it very effectively. So just something to be aware of there. Other than that, they still fit just the same, so you don't have to worry about that. With accessories like the R200 ring flash here, the extension head, and even the round head, which I don't have on the table right now, they just attach the same way that they always have. So you pop off whichever head is going on there, and then you just go here, pop it on, and you're good to go. Now we also sell the shoulder bag, so you could put this in a carrying bag and carry it around really easily if you're using something like the R200 or the extension head. It's a really good accessory to purchase as well. Here's a little sales plug for a good investment for whichever version of the AD200 you have, is this little fender for the back. The biggest repairs that we see on these is people dropping them or just putting them on concrete too hard. So this is really inexpensive. You can pick those up for whatever version. It will still fit the new one. The only thing on the new version, the LED light gets blocked just a little bit, but it fits perfectly fine. Allows you to stand it up, and it's going to save you from dropping this and destroying your screen. Now I know some of you might be thinking, I'm perfectly happy with my AD200 Pro. I don't really need all of the upgrades, but I really love those new heads. And previously you could buy just the heads separate. So if I damaged this bare bulb head or the Fresnel head, I could just purchase them from Strobe Pro separately. Now, you cannot just purchase this head and use it on your older version. It will not work. So that's the only backwards compatibility thing that's not going to work. And the reason is because right here, it has a power connection for the LED modeling lamp. And this is on both versions. You'll see it there, this little square. So it will not fit on previous versions. It looks the same, and then all of a sudden you notice that it won't connect in. Now, the same is not true for the older heads. You can easily put those on the new version if you want, and those are fully compatible. But just to note, you can't go backwards with the new AD200 Pro II bare bulb and Fresnel head. A special note about the Godox AD200, that's this bracket right here that allows you to put two AD200s onto it with a Bowman's mount and gives you 400 watt-seconds of available power. Now there's been some stuff online, different stores selling the AD200 Pro II, saying that it's not compatible with this. I really don't know where that came from. We've fully tested it here, and you can see that it is mounted. I'll fire this off a couple times here. Just go to my B group, I've already got it set up. And you can clearly see it's working. I can control them individually, no problem. In fact, I've got two different bodies on here. So I have the Pro II and the just original AD200 Pro. So you can mix and match. You could also put the original on here, no problem. Just so you know, the AD200 is fully compatible with the new light. We're ready to get into the menus and features of the AD200 Pro version 2. And as I'm going through this, I'm going to try to point out all of the new things in this light compared to the previous AD200 Pro. And you can follow along or skip ahead, use this as a reference in the future. We are going to be doing this on the very first version of the firmware. And as always, Godox does release updates along the way, so you might find a couple of things different if you're looking at this down the road. Now let's power this on, and the very first thing we're going to do is actually different from the old version. There is a new power up sequence here. We're going to use this flash test button. If we hold that, That's going to wake it up, and then we have to use the wheel. It's actually 3 clicks, and then it's going to go into the menu system, and that's just so you don't accidentally hit the power switch, turn it off or on in your bag. There used to be a power switch over here, and that has now been removed, and it's just that button on the back. So right away we are in TTL, and we've got another new upgrade here. You can see that this is a color screen TFT display. This is going to give you full color, very high contrast display. It's a great upgrade to this light as well, so you'll see a number of the ways that this can be beneficial to you as we go through it. So we're in TTL right now. If I push the mode button here, you're going to see the other modes. So we have manual, and then we also have multi. Now TTL can only be used with a controller. So really the only reason why they put this even on here is just so you know, okay, my light is in TTL mode. There's nothing I can do with it though. Like I can't do exposure compensation from the actual light like you could do on the old one. Everything is controlled with a controller. And Godox wants you to get the new X3, which is a great little touchscreen controller. And I'm just going to show you quickly how to pair this up. Now we have dedicated videos we'll link in this video so you can go and see these where we go way more in depth. I'm just going to show you the quick connection here. But before we get there, we just want to look at the group in the channel. So group is indicated by A right there. And then our channel is 21 up on the left-hand side. To change those, we just go into our menu system here. And our very first menu function is wireless, and just click set. That's going to open the wireless menu, and then we can go and click the set button again. That's like our enter button. And then you're going to be using the dial to rotate through the different options. I recommend just leaving wireless on. There's no reason really to turn that off. Now, to set our channel, we're just going to rotate down here, and by default, it's on 21. You can choose from 1 to 32 different channels here, and it doesn't really matter which one unless you're getting interference, and I'll show you how to check that in a minute. But let's just say we want to set this on channel 10, and then we want to set our group. It's on A by default, but we have multiple groups. And here's a new thing as well. You can see, hopefully by that light right on the side here, as I change these groups, you're seeing the color of that little RGB LED change as well. So you have all kinds of different colors, and they're just changing by default. There's no way to set this as of yet. Maybe in the future that'll be an upgrade Godox does. But we can flip through the letters and then through the numbers as well. So let's just set this to B, for example. Click set, and then we have our ID. ID is basically just a sub-channel, so if you were getting interference on one of the 32 channels, we can go over to ID, click set, and then we can set that from 1 to 99. Normally, I recommend leaving that off. People usually forget about that, and if you have an ID on your light and not set on your controller, it won't communicate. Now we have another new option down here, which is called wireless sync. And this is available on select strobes, but you also have to have a compatible controller like the X3 here. So what this allows me to do is go into the controller and push my channel and my ID to whatever strobes I have, as long as they're compatible and have that feature. So let's just do that really quickly. Again, we've got full videos on this controller, but we'll go into the wireless mode, and I'm just going to change this channel. So we were on 10 before. I'll go to 19, and actually I will set an ID. Let's just say that's on 7. Now what I'm going to do is hit wireless sync and go back into my menu where I just was. Click wireless sync, and instantly it is now pushed over channel 19, ID 7. It won't push the group because it wants you to have manual control to switch those easily. But here I need to go to the controller and click cancel. This just stays on. It's assuming that you have multiple lights that you could just go and do this to quickly. So you need to back out of there. So wireless sync is complete, but I have set this to group B, so I better make sure that I've actually enabled group B on my controller, which I don't have right there. So I'm just going to turn group B on. And now I can see it's in TTL. I can control my exposure compensation here now. So I can slide it +3 or -3 on the actual controller, but you won't see that actually changing on the light. Just to make sure I am connected, I'll hit the test button and you can see that it is firing. So that's TTL. Next, let's hit the mode button and go to manual mode. Now, the way I want you to think about this is that anything that we set on the controller is going to override anything that we do to the power levels on the back of the light. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this, just depending how you have your controller set up. But generally, we just want to keep that frame of mind that the controller is always in charge. So whenever I go and set something, the controller, if it's not set to the same settings, is going to override that. So why do we even have any manual control on the light if it's going to be overridden? Well, there's a couple of different ways that we could trigger this if we needed to fire it in a pinch. So we could plug in a third-party controller and fire it that way. We could plug in a PC sync cable directly to our camera and just adjust the power manually. Or we could also use our optical triggering. There's 2 modes in there, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes in the menu. As I mentioned before, this strobe has an expanded power range. Previously, the AD200 Pro would only go down to 1.256. We get a whole extra stop here. Now this will go all the way down to 1.512. You can see here I'm adjusting in 1/10 increments. If I speed that up, I can actually go in full stops. If we want to control that further, we're going to do it on the actual controller. So there you go, 1.512. That's an insanely low flash duration and low power level there. It's a really nice feature of this new light. So you might notice that I can go down to 1.512 here, but your controller might be limiting you. So let's just go on my controller again here. And if I bring that power level down, look, it's locking me there. I know that goes another stop. So I actually need to go into the menu of this controller, into setting, and then step. So this is the X3, so it'll say step. Other X Pro II, I believe, says step as well. And you need to go down to 1.512. So you can also change the increments on the controller here, so 1/10, and then you've also got 1/3. I like it on 1/3 here. But if I go back out now, we can go into our power level, and you can see now it's dropping all the way down to 1.512. So just make sure that's something that you adjust on your controller, and then you can take full advantage of these crazy low power levels on the AD200 Pro version 2. Our last mode here is multi-mode, and I say this in every video, but I want you guys to be fully aware that this is not turning your camera to continuous high or continuous low and blasting off a ton of flashes. This is something completely different. This is putting multiple flashes on the same frame. So this is best used in lower power level modes. So that's great for this light that goes all the way down to 512. But even something like a dancer on a dark backdrop, you're getting that sequence of moves all in one frame, and it's going to flash multiple times. So to set this, we can go in here and I can set my power level. But I also hit the set button and I have the number of times this is going to flash. So I can set that wherever I want it, but it is limited to the power. So as I mentioned, this is best used in lower power levels. Let's say I want to go 25 times at 19 hertz. The way you can think of this is it's going to fire 25 times at a rate of 19 hertz. That's just 19 flashes per second. So if you do the math on this, you're going to realize that you need more than a 1 second exposure. So you can actually go into the manual and you can see the chart limitations on the power. So if I just want to demonstrate that here, I can bring the power up actually, and you're seeing that number drop. So as I go to 16th power, 8th power, now I can only get 4 shots at 19 hertz, and it will cap out quarter power, 2 shots, and then that's basically all you're going to get to is 1/4 power. So those settings can always be adjusted. But again, if I go on power levels and I bring them really low, you're going to see we basically have a much expanded range. You know, I can fire 50 shots at 19 per second. So there you go, 50 shots at 1/512 power, which is quite incredible. And you can play around with this, do some freeze motion and sequence photography. Chances are you're not going to use this mode that much, but at least now you know how it works. I'm just going to switch it back to manual now. A couple more things on the screen. Up in the top right, we have our battery indicator. That's just giving you a representation of how much battery you have left. And then down here in the bottom left, we have our flash duration. So that's a T0.1 rating, and you can see that will adjust as I adjust the power as well. So those of you doing, you know, freeze motion and are concerned about the flash duration, you can see it right on the screen there, which is quite nice. The last button I want to show you is the modeling lamp button, and this is new on the AD200 Pro II here. The previous version did not have an LED on the bare bulb. This one now has a 6-watt LED, which is actually quite bright for this little guy. So if I push that once, you're going to see that we have 3 different modes. We have off, free, and proportional. So off is pretty self-explanatory. If I go to free here, this is where we can customize the power level. So most of you are probably going to want to use this just on 100% if you're using it like in softboxes or that kind of thing. But you could also use this light, you know, for some tabletop photography or that, you know, finding focus. It might be helpful to dial that down. And you can dial this all the way down to 10%. Just spin the dial there, but I'll leave it on 100 for now. So if I hit set again, this is actually a bicolor LED as well. So I can go from, on the low end, so really warm, I can go from 2800 degrees Kelvin, and I can go all the way up to 6000, which is going to be a cooler type light. So let's just set it around daylight here, 5200, and then I can set that. So you see I've set 5200, and if I go to my next mode, proportional, it's automatically carried that Kelvin temperature over at 5200, and I can do the same thing. If I adjust it here, we'll go to 51, and then go back, and you see it's set it at 51. Now, if I need to get out of this menu for any reason, I can just hit the modeling lamp button again, and that's going to bring me to the main menu, and you can see there I'm at 100%. And that will change obviously on my free setting here. If I go back out, you can see, yeah, it moved it to 98%. And that's going to also change with proportional. And I should just explain, proportional just means with the power of the strobe as you adjust it, the modeling lamp is going to get brighter and dimmer as you go. So right now we will set it to proportional, leave it at 51 and get back out, and it's going to say prop. Now you probably can't even see that on camera because we are on our lowest power level, but now I don't even have to touch the proportional modeling lamp. It's just getting brighter. Hopefully you can see that back there as we go. So if you have a number of AD200 Pro IIs and you want a visual representation of where they're at relationally, then you could turn on prop, and it's just going to give you a quick visual guide of where those ratios are set to. So most of you probably are still going to use this on free, and we can just set that back to 100%, get back out of there. Now, if you're here, you don't actually have to go into the menu and then go to off. I can just go right from here, hold the modeling lamp button, and it's going to turn it off. You see it disappears on the screen. Same way to turn it back on quickly. It'll go to the previous setting. So if I push it once, it's going to go into the menu. But if I hold it, it's just going to turn it on. And there's a number of controllers which you can actually do modeling lamp control as well. Not all of them do it the exact same, so check out the individual controller videos to see exactly how that functions with each controller. If you don't need the modeling lamp, I would highly recommend keeping it turned off. This is the biggest power draw, so you want to just leave that off if you're not using it. Now we're going to go into the menu and we're going to go through each function here. Now we'll start with wireless, but we've basically talked about that already. We talked about setting your channel in your group at the beginning of the video. Really easy to set and adjust here, or you can use the new wireless sync. To get back out, just hit menu here. Next we have our flash mode. In normal mode, this light has a color temperature variance of plus or minus 200 degrees Kelvin. But we can change that to color mode, and now it's going to be plus or minus 100 degrees Kelvin. That's great if you're working in some color sensitive environments, but you will see that it is asking you to dump that power now. So let's just get out of the menu. And if I dump it here, there's no set level of where it wants you to dump, but if I go to a higher power level, for example, and then I drop it down, it is going to ask you to do that. So sometimes it won't. If I'm at like 1/8, it is asking me want to go like 2 stops there. But just be aware that when you are in that mode, you do need to test fire it. Usually from the controller is the easiest way. Hit the test fire and then you can dump that charge to make sure your color temperature is accurate. We'll leave that in normal. In normal mode, it doesn't matter where you are. It's never going to ask you to do that. Next, we have our photocell, and we talked about firing this light if you don't have a controller, which you can do with the optical sensor in the top. So I have 2 different modes in here, S1. Now that's just going to be looking for another flash to trigger it. So it could be a speed light, a pop-up flash, another strobe. Anything right up here in this red band is where the sensor is. So it needs to be within line of sight for that to work. So if you're in a studio space, it can be great. If you're outside, there's a lot of other things like sunlight and UV ray and everything that can affect that. So it's not the most reliable way to do that. Definitely use your wireless controller if you have one. We also have S2. This just takes into account any pre-flash. So if you were using TTL, which emits a pre-flash, or red eye reduction, for example, then both of those emit a burst and then fire. So this just tries to sync that up with those pre-firing flashes. So normally make sure you leave that off. Otherwise, this is going to be flashing every time it sees another light go off. Next, we have HSS. By default, it's off because you can actually just, with your controller, it will automatically turn this on. So I'm not really sure why some camera menu systems may still need to turn it on manually, but most of them now, pretty much all of the new cameras will actually turn this on directly from the controller. Next in the menu, we have the modeling lamp, and we have 2 different settings in here, continuous and intermittent. So continuous, if I turn on the modeling lamp to display this, let's just go here, I'll hold it. So in continuous mode, when I fire the flash, the modeling lamp is going to stay on. And normally that's no big issue because the flash is almost always going to overpower that modeling lamp. In the rare case that you're 1/5/12 power and your modeling lamp is at 100%, you could have the slight chance that the modeling lamp overpowers the flash. And in that case, we would just go into our menu again, into that setting, modeling, and just change it to enter. So now when I get back out, what's going to happen is that modeling lamp is going to turn off as it flashes. So it has no effect now on the frame. Another common reason for switching to enter, especially on older lights, is that you would see the modeling lamp turn off and then turn back on when your flash is recycled. So as I fire it again, it's off and then back on. Now, the AD200 Pro II recycles so fast that you'd probably not even really notice that. But if you're used to that, you can definitely turn it on for that reason as well. But for now, let's just turn that off and we will go back and set our default back to continuous. Next on the menu, we have the beep, and this is pretty self-explanatory. As I fire right now, there's no beep as it recycles, but if I turn this on, now this is going to beep every time to give you an indication that the flash is ready to fire. Again, this light is so fast that it's just constantly going to be beeping, so most people are probably going to choose to leave that off. At higher powers, when it takes your flash longer to recycle, the beep can be nice, and you can use it in conjunction with the intersetting on the modeling lamp to kind of go hand in hand with sound and a visual indication. Next on the list, we have type. This just has to do with the power scale. Now, most of you are going to leave this in the fraction setting. It's just way easier to understand. But some of you coming from older strobes back in the day will notice that we can go into this 1.0 setting. So let me just set that and we'll get out of it here. So now this power level is giving me a scale from 1 to 10. Now, if you're used to that scale, that's great, but a lot of people get confused. They would think, well, half power on this should be at 5 then. Well, no, it's actually at 9. So each full number is a full stop. That's how we get our 10 stops from full power all the way down to 1/512 at its lowest power. This is just another way to understand that setting. But most of you, I would still recommend leaving that if you're not used to it, to the fraction power scale, and it's just easier to understand half power, quarter power, whatever you want there. Next on the list, we have standby. So this is going to be standby for the screen. So you can see that you can go from 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, all the way up to 3 minutes. I have it set right now at its highest setting just because if I don't touch anything, I give this screen no inputs for 3 minutes, it's going to shut the screen off just to save battery. You could probably just leave this on the default, which is 30 seconds. Most of the settings you're going to do are going to be done within 30 seconds, and then you're running the controller anyway, so you don't even really need to see this screen. Now we have our auto off, and you can set this from, I have it on 60 minutes here, but default I believe it's on 30 minutes. So you can go all the way up to 120 minutes or 2 hours, or all the way down to off. So if you're at an event and you need to make sure that this stays on, you're walking around and didn't pay attention to it, I would set this to off so your lights aren't way up on stands and then they turn off after you come back from lunch or something and you forgot about them and wondering why they're not firing and you got to bring them down and turn them back on. But for me, I'll leave this on 90 minutes for right now. Next, we have the brightness. That's the screen brightness. So this is just going to help you with contrast outside to see it. I shouldn't say contrast. It's going to help you with brightness, but not a massive effect. It does get dimmer. Before there was a contrast settings, but now with this TFT, it does actually make a little bit of a difference there. So we'll just leave that on 70 and you can set it wherever you like it. Next, we have the delay. Now, you probably should not touch this. It's very rare cases where you would need this. So, for example, maybe you're using a really old trigger and an analog PC sync cable to it, and it's giving you some kind of delay and you're not quite syncing right. We can go in here and just set that delay to try to time it up better. Or maybe you've got an old film camera that you're trying to use with these flashes and it's got a bit of a sticky shutter or something. You just need, a couple milliseconds on there to sync it up. Then you can go into delay and set that. Make sure that it's turned to off or you're going to introduce all kinds of problems with your shutter sync if you have set that by accident. Next, we have mask. This is another mode you're probably never going to use. It requires multiple lights. Essentially what it's doing is you would have a light for the background and a light for the subject, and they are going to fire in sequence. Basically, in simple terms, it's just trying to create a shadow so you can easily cut it out. It's making a mask. So you would have a black outline around the subject or over the subject so you could easily clip it in Photoshop later. But with all the AI advancements and the lasso tools and everything that you have in Photoshop, it's probably just easier to auto-select and pull the subject off of the background and just do it digitally. But if you want to play around with it, you certainly can do it. You just need multiple lights, and generally multiple lights of the same model is just going to make it way easier for you. Next, we have our language. You can just set that to English or Chinese. Be careful not to do that, so you're going to forget where it is. But you have the little icons there, so it's the globe if you ever do mistakenly change that and can't figure out where to change it back. And then we just have our reset. So if I hit set, it's going to go to yes or no, and that will just restore the factory defaults. It won't go back to original firmware. The most updated firmware will still be in there, but that will just reset all of your settings. So you added that flash pre-delay or something in there and you can't figure out where it was. That's where you can go in and just reset everything. Last, this will give us our device info or our firmware version. So you can go in there, it gives you the model number and the version. And as I said at the beginning, this is the very first version, 1.03. And as we move on in years to come, there will be more updates, but the menu may change a little bit, but all of the main functions are still going to stay the same. So there you go. That's everything you need to know about the menu. And to turn this off and get out, we just hold the test button and that's going to power it down. It also works as the power. So you don't want to just accidentally push it once. To turn it off, push and hold, and then it's just going to power down. Now that you have all the information, did Godox succeed at updating its best-selling product? I think the answer is a definite yes. You're getting a slew of new upgrades and features here, plus all your old accessories still work, and best of all, the regular price is the same as the old version. If you're in the market for a new light, please consider purchasing it from stropro.com. We offer a free 2-year in-house warranty, plus we offer expert support. We also carry a full lineup of stands, modifiers, and different accessories for all your lighting needs. So until next time, enjoy creating.